everyone. Unfortunately, this has turned into another example of a better late than never review, and this is quite beyond my intention because I placed my order for this guy around about the 13th of December 2022. Now this went up for immediate purchase, which essentially means you pay the full amount for the figure straight away and he's going to be made available very, very shortly afterwards. And in a way, I have to say, I actually quite like that model because it means you get hold of your figure much sooner. However, that wasn't to be the case because I had to wait a fair amount of time to get hold of mine. And there's a whole saga attached to this. Now, whilst a lot of people in the US were able to get their Spock in time for Christmas Day, unfortunately, I knew I was going to have to wait a little bit longer in the UK. What I wasn't prepared for, though, is that when he finally did arrive, I actually ended up with another Admiral Kirk. So I had to send Kirk back, and then they finally sent out Spock, which basically meant not only did I miss Christmas, I also missed my birthday before I finally got hold of Spock. But nevertheless, here he is after all this time, the Exo-6 motion picture Kolinahr Spock. So, without further ado, let's take a look at this guy. First of all, let's look at the packaging. As we saw with the Admiral Kirk, they've obviously gone for the theme of the motion picture, which I think is absolutely glorious. I love this design. We have, of course, the sort of the rainbow colours there, the beam and transporter beam, which looks just amazing. I think this is a really nice design. I love that image of the Enterprise and, of course, the Star Trek, the motion picture logo. I've always loved this design. I think it's a really attractive poster, and I think they've done a great job with this. Of course, we have the starfield behind it, and then bang in centre, we have an image of the actual figure itself, that portrait there, and I think this works tremendously well. Further to this, I did want to point out that this is a nice, solid, hard card box. This is nice and strong, this feels very, very sturdy, and it works tremendously well. So this looks absolutely brilliant. If we flip it and look at the side panel, of course we have the Star Trek insignia there. This is in a sort of gold foil effect. This is very attractive, looks very nice, catches the light just right, which I think is really good. And then if we flip it onto the back is admittedly a little bit more bland. It just has some credits there, not an awful lot going on, but it's all about the front of this packaging. Now, it is also a gatefold cover, so if you want, you can unclip the side panel there, which is held together with magnets, I believe, and it folds open. On the left hand side, we have a pretty blank panel, which is just the credits, the people who made this figure with a QR code there. But on the right hand side, we have this fantastic insert here, which is clearly of the Enterprise and that shuttle pod docking, which looks absolutely glorious. Now, if we remove this underneath, we can see there is a protective foam layer. If we remove that, we then finally see our Mr. Spock. Now, I have to admit, upon opening for the first time, I was a little bit surprised to find that his clothing was actually a little bit dishevelled. It looks like he's just been kind of plonked into the box. There's a few creases in his sleeves, and his shirt collar had actually been undone, which is unusual for Exo-6, whose presentation is usually spot on. But other than that, this figure looks absolutely tremendous. If we look at the head sculpt to begin with, we can see that this is a really great likeness of Leonard Nimoy. Now, interestingly, if we look at this comparison photo here, I would actually say that Leonard Nimoy's face here actually has a lot more detail, a lot more markings on the face that they haven't quite captured. But if I hadn't made this comparison and looked at these two references so closely, then I would have been absolutely convinced that this was an absolutely uncanny likeness of Leonard Nimoy. As it is, I actually wonder whether it's a slightly younger version, but nevertheless, I think this is still a really fantastic likeness. I'm really just nitpicking there. This is phenomenal stuff. I love the colouring, I love the paint apps, I love the expression on the face, the eyebrows. I think they've caught everything just beautifully, particularly if we look at the dimensions of the ear there. I think this is pretty much perfect. I think they've done a really, really nice job of this version of Spock. I really love the tailoring on this figure. I think this is a fantastic costume, and I'm really glad they've gone for this version of Spock from this particular film, because I just really like these Vulcan robes. I think they look really striking, and it makes him look really alien, I suppose, and interesting visually on display, rather than in his typical jumpsuit that we see later on. So this is much more visually appealing to me, and I think they've done a tremendous job. I love the Vulcan symbols there. I love the different material types they've used. They've got this very light, soft, silky material for the base cloak, and then there's this wonderful felt piping going around the edges, which I think it looks really distinctive, it really stands out, and it has a really nice texture to it. Now, there is a single button at the top of this, so you can undo that, and underneath he does have a purple or lilac covered shirt, which again is screen accurate, and I think this looks really nice, and adds an extra level of texture and detail, which is really effective. I really like these flowing medieval sleeves he has as well, and that actually articulated with a very thin wire around the edges, so you can mold them whatever position you want them to be in, which allows for all sorts of dynamic poses and however you want to display these sleeves. So I think you can actually do a lot of dramatic things with these sleeves to create different looks for this character, and I think it works really, really well. Another really cool little detail, and something I was not aware of as being part of this costume, is that he has this tiny little bit of rope which acts as a belt to hold his trousers up. I think this is really cool. It's actually tied in a knot, and as I said, this is something I was completely unaware of until I saw it on this figure, so I love the attention to detail here. He also comes with these rubber boots. Now, as you can see, that trouser leg is actually elasticated, so you can push that up, it will keep its shape, which is great. The one thing I did want to point out, however, you can see where that's tanned the leg underneath. Now, this isn't going to be a problem because this leg is always going to be covered up in terms of how I'm going to be displaying him, but I did want to point it out in case anyone was getting flashbacks of what happened with the QMX Captain Picard figure. Looking at the articulation, there is a ball joint at the base of the neck, which means there is a very smooth action of being able to move this head from side to side, lean it left and right, and of course, nod it forwards and backwards as well. And as you can see, there's a huge range of motion here, which looks pretty seamless and is really effectively done. So this is great stuff. There is also ball joints in the shoulders, which means that his arms will lift up and out. Again, the action is very, very smooth here. The upper arm can be rotated around, and of course there is double joints at the elbow, meaning you can bend that arm all the way back to touch his head as well, which is great stuff. There is a ball joint at the wrist, of course, that lower hand can rotate all the way around, and it will also hinge forwards and backwards. There does seem to be a ball joint in the waist area, so he can move from side to side and of course lean left to right, but then he can also bend forwards and backwards a pretty healthy distance as well. There's more ball joints in the hips, so he can kick his legs out to the side, he can kick them forwards and backwards, and there's more double joints at the knee, so that lower leg can bend all the way back there. As we saw, there is a swivel at the top of the ankle there, so we can move that boot all the way around, and there is also a hinge at the ankle that will allow the foot to lift up and down. The pair of hands he comes with in the box are two open hands, and they fold into each other quite neatly, and I have to say, this is a fantastic looking figure. I love the presentation of this, and for me, probably just edges out the Admiral Kirk in his overall look and aesthetic. Now, despite this figure and the Admiral Kirk before it being sort of budget releases or stripped down, pared down releases, which didn't have much in the way of accessories, Kolinahr Spock doesn't do too badly. He comes with an additional Vulcan salute hand. He has the closed sort of meditation hands as well, which is a first, I believe. I don't think I've ever seen this on any figure, and I think this is a wonderful addition. And he also comes with this Vulcan pin badge. He also has this standard plastic Star Trek base. Now, this is a transporter, which is pretty cool. I do like this. And of course, we also get this extra alternative mask, which you can slide over in its place. I'm really, really pleased that they gave him this Vulcan salute hand. For me, a Spock figure without this always feels a little bit like it's missing a vital part of the character. It's so distinctive and it's so necessary for display. So I'm really glad that he's got this. I think this looks tremendous. I'm super impressed with the Vulcan meditation hands. I think this is such a great pose. It's such a classic Spock pose. And as I said, I don't believe we've ever had this on any Spock figure previously. And I think they've got the sculpt just right. And it takes a little bit of work to get both hands to slot into place. When it does click into place, my word, it's really, really effective. I think this looks absolutely tremendous. I love it to bits. I think this is really innovative and it just looks fantastic. So yeah, top marks for Exo-6 for dreaming this one up. This works really, really well and it's brilliantly executed. Just like the Admiral Kirk figure, Spock can also change the pin badge into a really cool display piece. You take these handy clips, strap them onto wherever you want onto the base, then you take the backing board, bend the folded plastic to whatever position you want it to be in, and then you can take the pin badge by removing those plastic covers and then inserting it into that soft foamy base. And the overall look is pretty good, I have to say. I really like this. This is a novel approach, but I think it works really well for both figures and just adds an element, I suppose, of extra presentation, which is just unusual, and it's very, very attractive. And I think they've turned the base as pretty simple into something a bit more special. All in all then, this is a pretty fantastic figure, I have to say. Now, do I have little nitpicks? Well, yeah, one or two. I mean, you could argue that the likeness actually isn't that super accurate to this version of the character, but that's so minor. Really, this is still a very, very strong likeness, and I think it's pretty awesome, really. So I can't really fault it for that. I do think this is a fantastic presentation. I love the costume, the tailoring, and I really love these accessories that it comes with as well, because that's kind of unexpected. We knew these were going to be bare bone figures, stripped down of accessories. We knew that from the Admiral Kirk figure, which only came with 2 closed fists. I really think the extra hands here are really, really good and very impressive. I love the Vulcan salute, and I love the meditation hands. I think they're really innovative and really, really effective. I think they look fantastic all in all. Plus, he comes with that fantastic Vulcan medallion, which really elevates that display stand into something a bit more special. So, all told, this is a pretty fantastic figure, and for me, as I said, he just edges out the Admiral Kirk figure. I think this is probably one of my favourites in the line so far. If you enjoyed this video, please do give it a like, and remember to subscribe, as there'll be plenty more videos soon.